Well, hello everyone. If I'm correct, we should be live on YouTube at the moment. This is a short video I'm making for a meeting tonight of Southern Fried DNN, where several features of DNN 10 are being explained. And one of those features was made by me, which is the support for API tokens in DNN. Now, API tokens, just briefly an explanation about the why of API tokens. We all know API tokens that we use to integrate our software with other bits of software. Think, for instance, of GitHub, or think of Strava. In case you want to connect your app to Strava, you need to create an API key, put it in the third-party software, and that third-party software can then extract data from that service about you. I've worked on several larger DNN projects where, with a complex set of modules, where it was important that it would integrate with other bits of software. And until now, there wasn't much we could do except hack the JWT token authentication mechanism that is there. But that is a hack where you make that token just live longer than 20 minutes, right? Because in the end, it's annoying if you have to renew a token all the time. When you're talking about a long-term integration of one bit of software with whatever you've built on DNN. So hence the need for API tokens came along. Now, the work that's gone into it, I mean, technically, I think, I don't consider it a huge task. What was more of a challenge was to properly design it and take care of everyone's sensibilities when it comes to the sensitivities as it comes to security. Obviously, the idea that there might be a character string out there that would give you access to the inner workings of DNN quite rightly freaked out a bunch of people as I set about this journey to negotiate with everyone, like, okay, how are we going to do this? What would work? What do you think would be a safe mechanism? So in this short presentation, I would like just to step through how this is stepped up, how it's created this API token functionality, or how to enable it, let's say, which is it's a multi-step process. So for that, I have a DNN 10 installation running, which I will now share. Let's have a look. We'll go to, there you go, Firefox, share that. So if I'm correct, you should see the DNN 10 alpha version installed here. And the first thing we'll need to do is to enable this whole token functionality in the web.config. So we're going to go to the config manager, and in the config manager, we'll select the web.config, and somewhere towards the bottom, we've got our auth systems. Let's have a look for something. Not that, not authentication, not permissions, not module caching, not that. Auth services, there you go. This part is what you're looking for. And as you can see, a new entry will have been made. API token auth type .NU web API auth API token auth message handler. And by default, this is set to false. Enabled to false. So you will need to set enable to true. Default include can be true, and force SSL is by default set to true, and it should be true. But for demo purposes, as I'm not using a secure website, I will need to set it to false, otherwise I can't demo what it does for you. So once that's been enabled, it now becomes available to the site as well and to the installation as a whole. All of that happens under the security tab. So as you can see, the security tab we have under more, we now have API token settings. And here we have a setting to allow API tokens on this specific website for a maximum time span of a year. And where the user API token time span, a user can't actually specify their own time span for an API token, or they can, depending on your integration software, of 30 days. All right. So once we've set that up, the API tokens are now available both on the, let's say, installation wide scope, as well as this specific portal scope. And now we can start creating tokens ourselves. So let's say we would like to add a token. So I'm going to call this token test1 token. And I'm going to give it a scope of host. As you can see, there are 3 scopes defined: host, site, user. And this follows the basic DNN philosophy of you have the installation as a whole with a specific security level that you need to access that, which is the super user. We have a site level operation, which would require you to have admin level access to that site, to be an administrator of the site. And then the final level is user level. So that's whatever authenticated user in the system. So we're just going to start with the host level key. So I'm going to expire that in 180 days. And I'm going to allow that API key to access this API. So I'll come to what is listed here in a moment when you see what I've created. And it will create a key. Now I am going to copy that key and just write it down somewhere. I am going to go to, I'm just going to, text file. Let me just paste it there and make sure we don't forget that one. And because as soon as we click away this window, that key is gone forever, right? It's stored in the database, hashed, so there's no way to actually retrieve it again after the fact. If you lose it, you're going to have to delete it and recreate that key. So now this application has been opened up through an API key. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop this share and I'm going to go to the Visual Studio project I made. It's a little library to test this functionality. So it's a DLL that was dropped into the bin folder of the website. And it has a, here we go, it has the route mapper will tell us that any route mapped to test tokens testlib will be mapped to whatever controller it can find in this namespace, right? And so we should have a route of test tokens /testlib /test test controller, and then we've got test1, test2, and test3. We've got 3 different API endpoints. Now, the way this works is, as a module developer, you will give this web API endpoint an API token authorize attribute. And this attribute specifies 3 things. It specifies a name for it and a resource file. Now, I'll explain to you why this is important in a second. That should not happen. Right. and what level of authentication is required. So in this case, for test 1, it's host. For test 2, it's portal level. And for test 3, it's user level scope. So we're just going to focus on test 1 at the moment. It's set to be at a host level, and we want to go to that method. So I'm going to get out of here and now go to my Thunder client. Let's look. There we go. That one. So now you can see we can call. This is the URL to the website. API. We've got the test token / testlib. That was the base path, and then test controller and then test 1 method. If I do not add any authentication, of course, that should return no unauthorized. However, if I now add the token that I copied just earlier, which is that one, then if all goes well, that should say, that should give us access now. So that's okay. Just change it just slightly. Obviously, it will fail. Also, if I try to access test 2, that should fail. And test 3, that should fail because the scopes do not match. So it's important to understand that even though in DNN, normally host is, let's say, the boss and decides everything and can do anything on anyone's behalf. In the API token solution, what will it doesn't quite work that way. It means but there the scopes need to match from the method, the web API endpoint, to the scope that the key was created. Now, the reason we used the name and resource file is that if we want to show to the end user, want to give them some feedback on what API endpoints they're actually authorizing the API token for, we need to show some kind of a text. And obviously that's done through the resource file mechanism, as we do everything in DNN. So you should have a resource file somewhere with your solution that you point your label to and tell it, okay, this is test1.text. So first API endpoint is the English name for it. And that will mean that when I go back and I go to the DNN installation, let's go there, that when we create an endpoint, I'm going to go for test number 2, right? And that's going to be portal 1. Then I can see that the second API endpoint has been detected by the system and it's found it in the resource file and therefore is able to display that text here to give the user the best feedback for that. So we have that key. I'm just going to copy it and I'm going to paste it up. To cancel out of it. Then I'm going to go to the Visual Studio Code again. And now we're going to go to the second endpoint. And here, again, authorize. There we go. That's the old key that was there. That's been denied. Of course, without it, that's denied as well. And pasting that key that we just created, and now it should work. Now, the interesting thing is that for the third one, it's a user endpoint. And so there it is presumed that we have a user context. And this is the wrong one, just let me get the right one here. Let's have a look at the controller again. So with the third endpoint here at the user, we actually can make use of the user info display name. You can use it in the other ones, but it's kind of nonsensical because the API keys are created as a tool to access data either across the entire portal or across the entire installation. So here, the portal context should be should be valid. So the portal ID that you find here is the portal ID for which this was authenticated. And here we get the user for whom, and the portal, of course, for whom this was authenticated. So if I create a third key now, and say, well, okay, let's have one for this user, and that would be for me, in this case, the super user. Right, it's just going to be a user key done for 30 days, third endpoint. Okay, add it. I'm going to copy that out. Okay, and we're going to switch to the let's see the code here. We go to the third endpoint, and I'm going to go to the authentication here, where token with that, send it. It says hello from Tester or use super user account. So the anyone using that key would now have that user be the user in the subsequent code. So as a developer, you always need to keep this in mind whenever you are developing solutions on top of this. What is the authenticated scope that I'm working with? All right, so in a nutshell, that is being rolled out in DNN 10. I know I'll be using it in a few projects, and if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to me.